Hello everybody. Okay, so now I see that you can't basically see me, but that will change. I guess now you can see me. So, Happy New Year! How is everybody doing? How are you? How is this new year treating you so far? Is everything okay? As always, I would like very much if you can just say a hello here in the chat and just let me know where you are watching from. I guess some of you I already know from the other streams there. And I guess Vidas is from Lithuania. And Jean Carlos Reyes, I guess I don't know exactly where you are from, so where are you watching from? It would be nice if you can actually just very briefly introduce yourself. I really like to get in touch with the viewers, and that would be great. Also, I see that we are not that many so far, but watching from Dominican Republic, that's a great place to be right now, I guess. So yeah, I think I would very much enjoy to be there at this point. Like, yeah, probably it's fairly warm there. Alfonso from Colombia. Thank you very much for joining from Colombia. So yeah, I see we have a lot of countries where there should be warmer than it is right now where I am. So that's actually nice. Cool. Yeah, I see we are already, how many are we? 7 viewers. Oh, not that many. Usually we had more, but I guess it has to do also with the technical difficulties that I had so far. And yeah, I guess there are some good news why I had these technical difficulties. And probably if you watch my other streams, in the last stream I was saying that I plan to kind of like upgrade my setup. And really before Christmas I did upgrade my setup. So right now I'm streaming from a brand new computer, I would say. I just bought a desktop computer with a lot more resources than what I had previously because I was just using a laptop. So now I have a desktop computer with an i9 processor, 64 gigs of RAM, and also an NVIDIA graphic card of NVIDIA. It's the 3080, I guess. So it's not the 4080, not the really last one. But I think it should do enough for all the live streams and to be able to do everything from this computer. Now the problem is that I also got a new monitor with this setup, which is kind of like fairly bigger. I think it's a 34-inch monitor, and there I had a resolution, I don't know, of 2500 and something. And it turns out that I cannot stream when I use that resolution. So that's why basically my stream got interrupted, and I had to basically cancel it and to reschedule it and to restart a new stream after I have updated my configuration to use regular 1080p or the regular resolution of 1920 per 1080. And now I guess it should work. However, on Twitch, I didn't manage to get the stream working, so I'm not sure what the problem is there, but hopefully you can see it on YouTube. So please let me know if you can see it on YouTube and if everything's okay. Okay, so I see Alfonso, you are also a Code Wrinkles member. Thank you very much for joining. I really appreciate you being a member here and hope that you really find some useful information and resources and discussions here on this Code Wrinkles channel, and hopefully you have also joined our Discord community because we have a lot of discussions also there. So if you didn't do it already, if you check the membership tab on the channel, there should be kind of like a few weeks ago a post where there is an instruction on how you can join the Discord. Okay, so Sean, you're a good teacher. I like a lot all of your videos about the clean architecture. Yeah, I guess on clean architecture I just wanted to create some more videos, but suddenly already for some months everybody's creating clean architecture videos, so I just kind of like said, okay, it doesn't really make any sense to create another video on clean architecture since everybody's doing it. Seems it's a very popular topic and creators just riding the wave, so that's kind of like very understandable. So before we get started, there is one other very important thing that I want to share with you, and I would consider this to be somehow like a breaking news. So I received some feedback from some people that okay, the videos that I do are kind of like nice, but there are lots of people that that prefer to consume content more in a readable form. So starting today, we have the Code Wrinkles website, and in this Code Wrinkles website, obviously I will do a lot of different posts. Now usually what I will try to do is for some of the videos I will try to kind of like use, let's make myself a little bit smaller. So I will try to kind of like for each video, since I already create some scripts for them, and kind of like I already do a lot of preparation for the videos, I would just kind of like adapt those scripts that I have for the videos and maybe just also publish them here as blog posts, more or less. But I also plan to publish here things, for instance, that are not necessarily also in videos, maybe related also other technologies or some news that are worthy of information or worthy of spreading. And yeah, basically I will have this blog. Now I have already pre-populated it with some articles, so you see it's under codewrinkles.com. So let me just share it also in the chat. So this is the Code Wrinkles blog, and here it is. I have shared it, and feel free to kind of like recommend it further to other colleagues or to other people. Right now I have some articles here, so feel free to kind of like just tap in a little bit, but maybe not necessarily during the stream right now, but maybe afterwards. And if you find any of the articles that are already here that kind of like are worth and you think that are good articles, then feel free to share them with your colleagues on your social networks or wherever you might think that there might be people that are interested in this type of thing. Now particularly I am happy with this post, which it's the only one actually that's kind of like an adaptation from one of my newsletter numbers or issues. And yeah, it's kind of like I think it's a very deep understanding on the fact that when we kind of like develop applications and when we run applications, basically there's a lot more to those applications and running those applications than just writing the code for it. So we have to also take into consideration what is the overall cost of the application. And as you can see, you also have on each article there is this star rating, and everybody can kind of like rate this article. And if you kind of like give a low rating, you will also be prompted if you want to kind of like give some feedback why you gave a low rating. But hopefully you will not give low ratings to my articles. I really count on that. So yeah, if you think you will enjoy these articles, then yeah, just feel free to share it. And I didn't announce this anywhere so far, but I think I will kind of like announce it basically. You know what, let's do something nice here. let's do something nice. I guess it's a first thing ever. Let me go on Twitter. And here on Twitter, let's see, breaking news. Starting today. The Wrinkles community can consume content also in readable format. Okay, let's add something more. A brand new Wrinkles website, and there should be HTTPS, so everything should be fine. And yeah, that's basically it. So I just made a live announcement on Twitter from the stream. I think that's kind of like a very first thing on this channel, at least. Okay, let me just see if there are any comments here. No, only my comments. So I see that there are some other people that joined. Please just say hello, drop a hello, and let me know where you are watching from. I would very much and totally appreciate that. It's really important for me to get engaged, to kind of like understand where you are watching from, what are your preoccupations, and whenever you have any type of question, programming related or general, or I don't know, any discussion point that you might think might be useful to discuss here during the stream, just feel free to really use the chat and get engaged. That's actually the most important part, and this is how you can also get the most out of my efforts to kind of like create these live streams and videos and everything. So just get in touch. That would be the most important thing. Cool. I will now close this website, but don't forget it. We have a Wrinkles website starting today, and I will publish there a lot of different articles that would be adaptations of the videos, but also content that's kind of like not in the videos, but it's more appropriate to publish in a readable form than in a video. So just feel free to kind of like use this website. Okay, so let me then go back to our code here. So obviously, as I have a new computer, I needed to move everything all around from the old computer to the new computer, and while moving things around, I really hit a lot of different problems, even with the .NET installations and with Visual Studio and getting Aspire to work, for instance. But right now you see how fast it is, so definitely this computer is way better than the other. But still, I think everything should be fine right now. So if we go here on the students, for which we already have implemented something, I guess this create student. So we have already done this. So we have this one, and Aspire is working, and we have this local host where is this school management app. And here we would kind of like need to log in. But the problem is that right now, so basically when I moved everything around, I just lost my databases that I was using. So what I needed to do is to recreate those databases. If I go here on view and SQL Server Object Explorer, I guess this smartschool.web. I have updated the database and we have all the tables, and I have also updated the database for the students. So that was the last thing that we were working on the last time out. But I don't have any data in this database. So obviously right now I cannot log in because I don't have a user. And if you recall from the other streams, basically we didn't create a user registration mechanism because we won't need it in this application. Everything should be done by an administrator, so user won't be able to just sign up for this school management application. They will be signed up by staff from that specific school. So I guess one of the first thing that we need to do is to solve this problem is to kind of like give us once again the ability to kind of like create my user. And if I remember correctly, when we did create this functionality, just let me it should be here on the web, but I guess here in the identity and access management, and I guess here it is in this login. Also, please let me know if you can see my screen well enough. Maybe I should do the text a little bit bigger. Please let me know if it's readable. So if you can read it, that would be very, very important to understand. Cool. So as far as I remember here, you see that probably a lot of people blamed me when I decided to leave this commented code here. But if you remember, if you saw the very, very first stream that we did, there was a reason for this. So the idea was that we have implemented this login functionality, but what I wanted is that on the first login, I just wanted it to create for myself and to register a user that also has a super admin role. And also add the role to the database and do everything around that. So sorry for the background noise. So that's exactly, thank you very much for confirming that you can that you can see the code basically and everything's okay. I really much appreciate it. I see here also Raresh Golia, you should be from Romania, my home country. Where exactly are you watching from? And John Serpa, where are you watching from? That would be also very interesting to hear. I would appreciate that. Cool. So yeah, and here then we have this functionality, and basically when we kind of like perform the login, it doesn't just log in, because that's the only part where we perform a real login, but it just also creates my identity for me as a super administrator. So now that we have this once again commented out, this functionality should be once again available. I'm watching from Colombia. Ah, you were okay, you were watching from Colombia. Sorry, I think you also mentioned this earlier. No, it was Alfonso that was mentioned this. And Trarish, you are watching from Craiova. Nice. How did you end up on this channel? Because I don't really have a lot of viewers from Romania usually. And Emmanuel, okay, here watching from Ghana. Thank you very much for joining. So now we have somebody also from Africa. Now there's an emergency van passing. That's something that I really can't change. I really live on a very busy street with the biggest hospital in the region, and sometimes emergency vans just pass by. And no matter how much noise cancellation I add, they are still there, so you will still hear them. Cool. So yeah, now let's run the application again, because right now when I try to perform a login, it should kind of like create for me a user and register also the role for the super admin and everything in between. And then that would also give us a possibility to test the existing functionality that was, for instance, to add roles. So what I want to have here is, let me, I don't know, use this username, and let's use this password, and let's have a login. Change your password. Okay, the password just used was found on a data breach. Okay, yeah, obviously it was found on a data breach. Yeah, and here already I'm signed in, as you can see. And if I go under identity and access management and roles, I can already see the super admin role, and we can add some other roles like student. Add role. Let's close it. So it added the role. Let's add another role, and let's call it I don't know, maybe teacher. Let's add it, and let's add another role, and we can call this to them. What role do we need? Parent or relative or parent. Let's call it just parent for now. Cool. So we have this one. Now we have a bunch of different roles, and even if we navigate away and navigate back, those roles were persisted in the database. And yeah, I'm a coworker. I wanted to see how you. Oh my God! Yeah, Raresh. Yeah. So Raresh is actually a colleague of mine, and now I remember that I talked to him, and he will be creating some internal content in the company where we work on. I think it was TypeScript and Node.js, or just TypeScript and React, or no, TypeScript and Nest.js, or something like this. Yeah, so cool. Thank you very much, Raresh, for joining. Okay, and what we can also test if it's just working is if we go to the logout endpoint, it should, okay, what did I do wrong? It's not roles and logout, it's just logout here. Okay. Still not okay. So I was not careful about the URL, so it should be this logout. And now I'm logged out. And yeah, now I don't want to register my user again, so I will need to close everything down and come back to the code and to just once again comment everything out. And I think these are all the things that I need to comment out. So let's just comment out. And now when we log in, it is only the sign-in manager, password sign-in async with the email and with the password. We don't want to have a lockout. And then we just navigate to the home page. Okay, so yeah, let's run again and just check if the login right now works, because right now we have the user there in the database. So that should be okay. Let me just view here. Oh no, not here. This one. And email, it should be this one, and this password. Yeah, I will always get this notification. Obviously I use the very, I don't know, dummy password. So, and the roles, and yeah, basically all the functionality is here right now. But I don't recall exactly, because I think the last live stream was what is lockout on failure. Basically it will lock the account out. So if the account has too many failed login attempts, it will be locked out and it will not be able to log in again until an administrator unlocks that account. It's basically a security measure, and virtually almost all applications basically have this. Like if you type in your password 3 or 4 times wrong, then basically you are locked out and you probably have to get in touch with support to get you unlocked. So it's a fairly familiar, I would say, behavior generally. Now I was thinking that we have also we have implemented here students. Error 404 not found. So we haven't implemented it so far. So I guess the next thing, and because I think we have, what language is that? It looks weird to me that in order to create a dictionary, you have to wrap it in a new function. But where did you see this, Raresh? It's C#, it's .NET, but it's not that you need to wrap it in a new function. You can create a dictionary wherever you want. So where exactly did you see it? So let me check. Where exactly did you see this, Raresh? I mean, we're not creating a directory anywhere. It's some fun. New first name, last name. I think it should be somewhere here probably, but you mean this one? No, it's not this one. Yeah, but constructors are similar to to the JavaScript word, so it should be kind of like exactly the same. For claims. And this is this new list. I mean this is what is called an object initializer. So basically when you create a new list, you can just already create this object initializer. But right now in C# there's even a newer feature, which is a collection initializer, and you can just use directly square brackets and provide your new objects there. So it should work then similar to what you have in TypeScript at least. Yeah, it's a shorthand constructor. Like instead of having new claim, you just provide new and it creates an instance. It's basically some syntactic sugar over the constructor that simplifies the object instantiation or the constructor calling. And yeah, right now in the newest version we have even primary constructors that we'll probably use at a certain point here. And in these primary constructors, yeah, we can kind of like also do some very, very nice stuff. Okay, but let me check exactly under features. We have this account, we have these roles. No, so we didn't implement any frontend for the students right now in the web application because we said we wanted to start from the backend. So we had the student service that we have implemented for creating a student. And as far as I can recall, if we go here on this create student, which is the we have here the handle or the command, which is a mediator I request. And then we have the handler for this specific command. And in this handler, we just, well, create a new student here with all the information that we provide, and we save it to the database. And then we return basically that newly created student, but only with the properties that we want to return and or that we added right now. And yeah, that should be okay. And if I recall correctly, we should have everything implemented for this operation. So I think the next thing that we wanted to do was to move to the backend for front end and implement some endpoints there to kind of like be able to work with this service. So let me check. We have here this create student gets the command, the create student comment. It creates based on the new student that we get here from the body, and then it sends via the mediator and then return okay results. Yeah, we haven't implemented any global exception handling, and I specifically said this during the past live streams because I just want to focus right now on getting some functionality. So I didn't really concentrate at all on cross-cutting concerns. So obviously don't take this as a best practice. It's just like a proof of concept what we're doing right now. Cool. Now if we go to the backend for front end, I see that this service is actually kind of like empty. It's basically the default that we have here with the minimal APIs. We'll use for the backend for front end a minimal API, because for the backend for front end will actually be just an aggregator. It will just know how or what downstream services it needs to call to fulfill a certain request. At the beginning, right now, probably it will just proxy requests from the web or requests that come in from our web application to the student service. But you'll see that later, basically, it will probably have to kind of like, if you want to get some data, it will have to perform different calls to different services to aggregate that specific data. And that's a fairly common pattern for when we build microservices application. Obviously, it has its pros and its cons, so I don't say that you should definitely use this idea of backend for front end, but in my experience, I think most of the times it's kind of like a little bit better to have it. Now, let me just delete everything that we have here. So what we need to do next is basically create endpoints here, or create just one endpoint right now for a student that will be able to kind of like get a request that comes from the web application, and then redirect that request or make a request to the student service, get the information about the student, and then return the student to our web application. And here probably we'll need to use a lot of different stuff. Here we'll need probably to use also Refit and some other things like this, because we will need to also create some API clients. Okay, so just give me 1 second. Let's see if everything is okay. Seems okay. Seems that the stream is still working. Cool. So I'm not sure exactly where to start here. For now, we will close the web. We don't need it. I think we will need a student service because we'll need to get some information from that service. And I think we'll also need to work mostly here. Now let's start maybe with the student endpoints. And what I want to do here, obviously, this service will have kind of like a lot of resources to work with, and we can't just simply add everything here in our program.cs file. So all the minimal API endpoints. We also don't need this weather forecast. And I guess we are okay with things that we have here, but I don't just like comments here. Let's get rid also of them. And yeah, so what I would like to do here is I would like to kind of like create groupings for different endpoints for different resources that we will call, and I will add here a new folder. Let's call this students, and in this folder let me just add, where is it, a class, okay. And I guess I will call this class student endpoints, and I'll click on add. And I will also make this class static. And here I would like to create an extension method on the iEndpoint route builder so that I am able... Okay, what are you doing this here? No, I don't want to create a controller here. So that was GitHub Copilot in action. This time it was kind of like useless. So public static, it's iEndpoint route builder that we will return, as this is an extension method basically, and we want to be able eventually to chain different things together. But I will just no, what did it do? No, this Go pilot and student endpoints. So these will be the endpoints for the student resources, at least for the student service, for the student in the student service. So it will be on this endpoint route builder, and let's call this app. Cool. And what we can do here already to not have exception is just return the app, and then we'll kind of like build everything that we'll need. So probably we will need a lot of different endpoints here. But now the only endpoint that we would need is the map post. So what I will do here is, first of all, I would like to create a route group basically. So var students equals app.map group. And this will kind of like create for me this basic route or this basic URL. That's the base for all student endpoints, so they all will start with students. And then on this route group we can separately add this students.map post. Okay, so here GitHub Copilot did some suggestions for me, and it is this create student. Actually, that's actually a good thing, because this should be this is something that we should get from the body, I guess. Now, the only thing that I would like to do is actually extract this in a different method. Yeah, so I will keep what Copilot gave me so far, but I will kind of like refactor it a little bit. Where am I here? So return app. I am here. I want to go outside of this, so I will create a new one, and that would be private in this case. It would be static. It would return a task, so it would be an async method. And let's create all this create student. Cool. Now in this create student, we would kind of like need to get in some things. This create student method should kind of like make an API call to our student service. And to do this, we need two things. We need an API client, and we need a DTO basically. So let's have this one, or let's create this one. I guess the DTOs that they should be bound to the API client. I guess they should be bound to the API client. So is anybody still watching here? Yeah, I guess people are still watching. For those of you that have joined more recently, please just drop a hi, say hello, and let me know where you are watching from. I would totally appreciate that. And if you have any type of question or just want to say something, or really anything, not necessarily related to just this project that we are working on right now, feel free to use the chat, and don't be shy, get in touch. And that's why I create these live streams, to be able to kind of like get in a closer touch with all of you. And let's take this opportunity and try to communicate a little bit better. Okay, so how should we proceed with this? So hello Ajmal, and thank you for joining. Okay, source code, and also from UK, hello there. Ajmal, the source code, that's actually a very important thing. I make the source code available for each live stream after the live stream for the Wrinkles members. So if you join the Code Wrinkles membership, you can join it on the lowest level, which is called supporter. You will have access to the source code after I finish the live stream. So after each live stream, you will get the source code. Just check the membership tab of the YouTube channel, of the Code Wrinkles channel, after you are a member, and you will get there the instructions on how you can get the source code. So that's how I make the source code available. Okay, so now let's go one step further, as let's say we will need an API client. So definitely we'll need this. Now, where should we create this API client? In this service, so in this backend for front end, we will have a lot of different API clients. Probably for each service, we will have a different API client. I don't want to have only one big API client that will have all the calls to all the different services. So I think I'll create a folder here in this one, and I will call this folder API clients. Also, let's not capitalize the L. And here in the API client, I guess, should I create a new folder for each one? And yeah, for the API client, yeah, we will use Refit. That's important. So, because it's really very easy to create API clients with Refit by just creating some interfaces. So let's click here on Browse and Refit. And I think we need to install this one with the HTTP client factory, so that we can add Refit as part of or with a HTTP client factory. And to be honest, I don't recall exactly if this HTTP client factory also adds the regular Refit package. So I'll just add it also manually once again. I think it does. I definitely think it does. So Refit is really a very cool library. It kind of like allows you to very easily create this type of API clients, and you just need to specify an interface for that. Now in this API client, let me just here add, I said we need to add an interface, and let's call this students API client. Okay, and we have this interface. Now I will use the same file to kind of like create the necessary DTOs for this or that this API client will use. So let's have here a public, let's use records in this case, and Raresh probably will find this once again confusing. And actually, yeah, Copilot already gives us some stuff here, but no, I don't want to inherit this from my request. So what we will need here is, how did we call this in the students? Create student to here we have this create student class. This is just the command. New student. String roll number. So we have created this roll number, first name, last name, and date of birth. Roll number is kind of like the identifier that we have from the entire Smart School application, and that will be or will use as a roll number basically the ID that we get when we register a user. So it would be the ASP.NET user identifier, which will be a GUID. So we'll just use that. So we'll kind of like, I guess we'll need to send this information. So we'll kind of like need to have this the same type of but actually I can simply do this, and obviously you will say that, hey, I should extract all these DTOs in a different project, and we'll end up having a library that will contain all DTOs. But I don't want to do this, because as said here, this DTO is only responsible for how to handle the creation of a new student in the students microservice. But in the backend for front end, we might do this differently at a certain point. So the moment I try to kind of like bring everything together and reuse them, I will get in a lot of problems further down the line. So from my point of view, that's not a violation of the single responsibility principle, because this DTO with the DTO that we will create here, even though right now they will have exactly the same properties probably, they will have totally different reasons for change. So they might change due to different reasons, due to different requirements. So I want to keep this ability to be able to independently change or extend or change the functionality of the different parts of my microservice. So if I just have everything in one library and try to reuse it, really, I know that kind of like this is theoretically a best practice, but from my point of view, it's totally misunderstood. Because in this type of projects, if you try to reuse things this way, you will have a lot of problems down the line. So let's have this create student and roll number, first name, last name, and date of birth. Also, hi from Denmark. Here's Gil. Did I miss a lot from Cyprus? Cyprus, yeah, it's a very nice country. I visited twice. I don't think you have missed that much, because we had a lot of technical difficulties at the beginning, and I even started a stream later. So probably that's not, but what you have missed and what people might have missed that are watching right now is that starting today, Code Wrinkles has basically also a new place where we can gather as a community. Let me just show this again, because I see that there are a lot of new people here. So starting today on Code Wrinkles, we also have this Code Wrinkles website dedicated for people that would like to learn more or to get in touch, but via readable content and not via videos. And this is the website right now. It's really brand new. I don't really have a lot of articles. I just worked really a lot of hours during this weekend to kind of like set up this blog and all these articles that I have right now. But feel free to just read these articles. Let me know which one do you like. You'll see that here, for instance, if we go, you get an information on how long it takes to read it. But you also at the end have this option to rate these articles, and that would help me a lot to understand which articles do you like and which you don't. And yeah, just feel free to kind of like share this with anybody that you might think might find this useful. So that's really a totally new thing that I have just announced in this stream. And while on stream, I have even tweeted this on Twitter, or on X, sorry. I still call it Twitter. Cool, let's go back to our thing here. Let's just double check. So we have here, no, where are we here? Where were we? This is the API client. No, this is the login. So where were we? What's wrong with me? So we are in this student. So it was in this create student controller. So we have roll number, first name, last name, and date of birth. Roll number, first name, last name, and date of birth. So it's okay. Cool. So yeah, Raresh might find this confusing again, but this is actually a record. A record is under the hood basically a class, but it is a class that it's already implemented by C# in a way that it kind of like checks for structural equality and not for reference equality, which is the default basically on classes. And this is actually a primary constructor. And on record types, we already had primary constructors since we had records, I think from C# 9 onwards. And the idea of the primary constructor is that you just provide here kind of like these inputs in the primary constructor, these parameters, and under the hood, C# will take care of generating the backing fields and the real properties on this specific class. So we can really just with a single line of code, just create a brand new object with everything that you need. And it's kind of like very useful for this type of DTOs, or maybe even if you want to implement DDD value objects. Okay, so we have this create student API client. Now that we have this create student API client, we just need in this iStudent API client to use Refit and to just define the interface for how this call should be made. So I will have to task, but this also will return a student. So we also need another DTO. And let's public record student base info, and yeah, here we'll kind of like need a bunch of different properties. So what we'll need here is we will also need the ID that we will get from the student service, because the web will need that specific ID, and that one is an integer in our case. We'll also need the roll number. I guess these properties would be exactly the same. First name, we'll add a string last name. Let's have a string email, and I think I will use a date time, but let's just maybe move on a different line, and that would be date of birth. And I think when we get the answer from the student service, we actually have some other information there. So let me go to the student service, student controller, and okay, result, and the result here will be a student basic info. Let's go here, and the student basic info has student ID, which is this one, the roll number, first name, last name, date of birth, and the age. Age on the student, I guess it's if we go to the domain and if we go to the models, and student is actually a property that's calculated. Its age, we have this calculate age method that we have implemented here. This is how the age is calculated. So age is calculated, and I think we also have configurations for Entity Framework Core so that we don't store the age in the database. Let me double check, because if we don't have this, yeah, we have ignore student age, so we just ignore that, and then is required, and we have set maximum length for this property of first name or last name to kind of like make sure that we don't really use a lot of storage from our SQL server. So we can also add the age here. Where was it? My student API client, date of birth, and it would be int age. Okay, so this is what we will return. Now coming back to this interface, it will kind of like return a task of student basic info, and let's call this create student. And now the way Refit works, it kind of like automatically generates an API client for you based on what you define on the interfaces. And there are some conventions or things that that Refit says or defines. For instance, we can use this attribute to see that this is actually a post. And here we will need to using Refit. We'll need Refit for this. So I want this to make a post, and the post should be to the student's endpoint. And obviously here we need that's a string, so we need to do it like this. And basically when we will wire this up together, you will see how cool and why Aspire is actually very important, especially for local development, because it makes things a lot easier for a lot of different scenarios. So here we define that we have a post for this endpoint of students. When we add this iStudents API client as with HTTP Client Factory, we'll configure the base address, so we'll just have to specify the endpoints afterwards. And then here in the body, for instance, we need to say, hey, that from body, and this is also coming from Refit, so it's not the from body that we have in ASP.NET Core, it's just body, which is from Refit. And here, for instance, we say that we want to have this create student, and let's call it student. So basically right now that's all the information that we need to provide Refit, so that Refit knows exactly how to kind of like do these things. There's an emergency van again, sorry for that. So did anybody take a look at the new Code Wrinkles website, the blog? What do you think about it? Let me have a drink. And by the way, I have water in that cup, so it's nothing else than water. Okay, so now that we have this API client, the next step that I think I would like to perform here is kind of like go over to the program.cs and actually add the API client. However, to do this, we need to do some checks in the Aspire host, because I don't remember how I saw. You see that here I added here this project Smart School Web and the students and this backend for frontend. However, here is where we can kind of like combine and say that some services depend on other services, and then we can use basically the names that we provide here as, let's say, placeholders for URLs, ports, and things similar to that. And that's why Aspire is actually very nice. So what we can do here is we have once again this project students. And these project students will not depend on any, no, this is the web. This will kind of like depend on, I don't think it will depend on anything. Right now, I think that only our backend for frontend kind of like depends on things like this. So we need to change a little bit things here. So var, this is the web app equals builder add project, and then this short name. And something similar we need to have here var, and this is for students, and equals builder add projects, and this is the students. And here let's also give here a variable, because we might need it later. Var bff is add projects, and this bff. However, this backend for frontend will probably depend on the web itself. So here I can say, for instance, just very simple with reference. And here in this with reference, we can just specify, for instance, that this backend for frontend will have a reference to students. And actually, that's all the references that we will need so far. Now, if we think a little bit, our web application will need an API client that will make a call to this backend for frontend. So what we'll do here is we'll take this one and we'll move it here. Because also in this case, we'll say that with reference, so this one will need to have a reference for this backend for frontend project. So it would look something like this. Now, obviously, this variable right now, we don't use it so far, so we can just maybe even remove it. We just add this to the web app. Cool. So now these projects are kind of like know that they somehow belong one to the other, and Aspire provides us that under the hood this way that we can kind of like use this to kind of like straightforward and make configurations a lot easier. So what this allows us to do is to come, for instance, in this API client, in this backend for frontend, and in this backend for frontend, here where we want to register the services, we can have builder.services, and here we can use add refit client. Okay, here probably we'll just need to add using refit. Okay, and here okay, we need to say that I want to add the students API client, so the interface that we have defined earlier with all that conventions around refit. So yeah, and then what we can do is here say configure with configure HTTP client, because this is a regular basically extension of the HTTP client factory, like the add HTTP client method. And here we can, for instance, say that the configuration, for the configuration we want the base address here to be okay. And now watch this, because why do you do this? Equals new URI, and here watch this. So what we can do here is we can just provide HTTP. So forget that we know, okay, local host, but which port, what should we do exactly? No. We just say students. And based on Aspire and the configurations that we have added there and the references, it will automatically add basically the proper configuration or the proper bindings and HTTP and URIs that we will need to just make this call. So we just need to provide this one. Although I think we named it differently. Sorry, let's go back here. So it was smart school.students. Okay, so let's maybe just copy it from here to make sure that that we don't get anything wrong. So no, this is not the one that we wanted. This is the one that we wanted. So let's go back here, and instead of students, it would be this one, smart school.students. Yeah, and now basically everything should be configured from the point of view of our Aspire configuration, and basically I should be able to kind of like use this iStudents API client in my endpoint. So if I go back to the student endpoints, I can say here that I just want to have an iStudents API client. Let's call this students client, and I can also see let me think a little bit about this. So this no, actually this one will need to get basically the body that I receive from the web application and basically transform that body into what these iStudents API clients need, and then kind of like do the request. Okay, cool. So this means that this endpoint should also get in the body something that's similar to the new student. So let's do them. Let me just think about this. If we just need, if this one should contain different properties, then I guess it's this one. It's roll number, first name, last name, and date of birth. So I think it's only this. I think it's basically this is the only information that we will need to get from this. So we can just reuse this in this case, because it's in the same service. So in this case, reusing it, it's not that bad. Cool. And then basically we can just read this from this body and just kind of like use it to just forward it to the other one. So let me go back here. So I will want to have in this method also create student, new student. Okay. And then basically the only thing that I would need to do is have here a var result. Wait, student client, create student, and I will provide a new student that I will get from that body. And then we just return. I know this is a creation right now, but since we don't have any gets, we'll just return okay, so not 201. And I want to return typed results instead. Dot okay result. So this one should right now make the call here. Obviously here that's a task of I result. What we return here. Okay, and now what we can do here is, so what we have this async, here we get this create student, this new student, and here we can for instance use this from body. So to mark it that this needs to be met from the body. This needs to be met from services, but I don't need the I don't need mediator. We don't use mediator in this project. Probably it looks in all the solution and things that I will use mediator here, but I won't use mediator here. But instead I will have here an I students API client. Why doesn't it resolve it? Why doesn't it resolve this interface? Because Let's call the student client. Yep, right now it worked. And okay, so I get these new methods here. So I get this as basically true dependency injection. So it's very easy. And instead of using the mediator here, I will just call my method here. So we can kind of like simplify this a lot right now. Just let me check. So here it ends here. So we can basically delete everything that we have here. And what we can say here is await create student. You know what, just maybe let's just move the entire lambda expression on new line, so that on here we just provide the student client that we get to dependency injection and also the new student. And that's basically how we will proceed with all the operations that we will do here with our students. And yeah, so we'll create static methods, and here when we map the endpoints, we'll just simply call the methods that we have defined previously or earlier, and we should be good to go. So I see that there's a lot of silence here, so nobody is saying anything. Is anybody still watching? I really, please don't be shy and just feel free to use the chat. Just please let me know whenever you have any type of question, or just, I don't know, please don't let me feel alone here. Don't let me feel alone. You know what, let me check a little bit. Okay, it's okay on Twitter. Okay, so I noticed right now that when I share the Code Wrinkles website, basically doesn't really fetch the default picture that I have set, so I definitely will need to troubleshoot that. But that's a problem for another day, most probably. Okay. So I see people commented here something. Listening and coding, loving the content. I am looking from India. Thank you very much for joining from India. I think most of the viewers are right now from India. Thank you very much for joining. Sir Anderson, you are not alone. That's good to know. That's really good to know, and I appreciate that a lot. Cool. So now we have wired everything up here. So the next step that we will do, I guess we need to kind of like set the same thing up also in our web. So in the web part, we'll need to create an API client that will call, or that will know how to call the backend for frontend. And probably the API client I assume in that case, we'll have only one API client for the entire backend for frontend. Maybe we'll refactor that at a later point, but we don't. I can't really imagine how it will evolve in the future. So I think we'll have everything in one single API client for now, and then basically I think we'll also need to do the user interface. Oh my god, there's a lot of things to do here. So we'll need to do the user interface for creating a student, or since creating the user interface will take us probably a lot, and to kind of like see if everything is wired up correctly and if everything's work, maybe we just create something like a workaround. Like we create a component, a very dummy component with a button, and when you click on the button, basically what it will happen, it will create a student. So we'll kind of like hard code the information about the student at the beginning, so we won't add a form and things like this. We'll just have a button and hard code everything in that interactive component, and just see that everything is wired up. Because once we have that wired up, basically the flow is that the web application or the component will use an API client to make a call to the backend for frontend. The backend for frontend will use another client to make a call to the student's microservice, and then everything should be returned the way back. And in the Aspire dashboard, we should be able to see the trace of really all the hops that our request went through in order to be able to service or to fulfill the request that we have made from the web. So I guess that's really the main goal for today. Okay, so I see here there are some new people. I really like your thought process. Okay, I'm glad that you like it. I'm not sure if it's a good one or not, but yeah, that's usually how I think also at work on projects. Hello, watching from South Africa. Thank you very much watching from South Africa. That's kind of like, actually right now I remember something. So I've never been to Africa before, but this will change. So in February I will visit Africa, but it will be for vacation, so not for work. And unfortunately I will not be in Ghana, or I will not be in South Africa, but I would be in Zanzibar in Tanzania. But it's really the very first time that I will be kind of like on the African continent, even though Zanzibar is an island, but yeah, still I'll consider it to be the African continent. So I'm excited about that, and I will definitely think about all my viewers from Africa when I will be there. So there's some question here. I am watching from UK. Thank you very much, Taj, for watching from UK. Where exactly from the UK? Then Trent Grandy, so excited to see this project pick back up. Thank you a lot. Then why do not go from web API to front end? What do you mean web API to front end? And welcome from Fort Worth, Texas. Cool, thank you very much for joining from Texas. And also from Pakistan. Oh my god, there are a lot of people here, new people. Thank you really very much for joining and for getting active into the chat. That's really important. So there was this question here. So excited. Okay, so excited to see this project pick up. Yeah, I promised I will continue with this project. However, I had some problems or difficulties in the process of transitioning basically my my setup. As I mentioned during the stream at the beginning, I basically have a brand new computer with a lot more resources, so I kind of like did some investment there. And I had a lot of challenges at first when the computer arrived. It was kind of like built by somebody, but then it was shipped to me and kind of like something broke, and I had to bring the computer back into service. And really, there was really a lot of tough time. And between Christmas and New Year, initially I wanted to have a stream between Christmas and New Year, but you know how this period is. Basically every day either somebody visited me or I needed to visit somebody, so I really couldn't find the time to kind of like do the stream. But definitely this stream will continue, so we'll continue to work on this application for a long time for now. So you'll be able to kind of like see exactly all the progress and how it gets from something simple, what's right now, it's very simple and straightforward, but it will get more and more complex, just like real projects that we have at work. Why do we have to create endpoint in other project? Can we create endpoint in student project? We have endpoint in student project. So if we go in the student project, we have an endpoint, but we have said that we want to use this pattern that's very popular or common when we have microservices, which is called the backend for frontend, or you can also call it an aggregator. Now the idea why we use this, so let's see here in the student, we have this student, where is it? Services, students. So here is the students, we have this create students, so we have an endpoint in students here in our student microservice. But the idea is that in the microservice application, the problem is that you will have a front end, and that front end, that web application, will need to know everything about all the services that it needs to make calls to, and it will need to make a lot of different calls. Like right now it's very simple, we are in the early stages, but you'll see that when we have more complex views on the front end, in order to kind of like get all that information for all those views, you will have to aggregate information from a lot of different microservices. So if the front end needs to do this, then it needs to do a lot of different HTTP calls and aggregate them, and that really creates a huge performance problem, because kind of like, yeah, it's very complicated to do, and you would have to create a lot of HTTP requests. So instead of doing this, there is this concept of having an aggregator or a backend for front end, and the front end, the web application, just makes only one HTTP call, and the only responsibility of the backend for front end is to aggregate all the information that it needs from the different services and return just one single response to the web application. So it's kind of like makes working or it makes the life easier for the web application, and this type of pattern is really used no matter what you're using on the front end. So obviously I never used this backend for frontend or with Blazor because I never worked on a microservices project that kind of like had a Blazor frontend, but in Angular and React. So you will have the same. Instead of making dozens of different API calls to different services, you just know as a frontend you need to make one call to one service, and that service will aggregate everything for you. Is it good to write our own client or generate using nswag? Then configure named client with poly retry. Like basically, this question is actually a very good one, but I think my opinion is that it's always kind of like better to write your own HTTP clients, and kind of like if you would write your entire HTTP client from scratch, obviously that would take a lot of time. But that's why I say that using Refit is actually very good, because in Refit, writing an HTTP client is nothing else than declaring some interfaces or some methods on the interface and nothing more than that. And then when we add here basically this Refit client and we this configure HTTP client, here we can already configure if we want to use poly and retries and everything. We can already do that. However, since we are in .NET Aspire will add it for us by default. So we don't need to even care about this right now because it will add that. So we don't have to do it manually. So to answer your question once again, I think that using Refit is kind of like a middle ground between creating your entire API client 100% from scratch and between kind of like using nswag to generate the code. And I prefer to basically use Refit in this regard. Does RabbitMQ do this job in Kubernetes instead of backend for frontend? Frontend calls message bus, which is subscribed to by the service. From my point of view, the frontend should never call the message bus. Like obviously, if you have Blazor that's fully server rendered, that's okay. But I wouldn't like the frontend to call the service bus. Frontend should just communicate through HTTP, maybe gRPC, GraphQL, but the frontend shouldn't send things to the service bus, from my point of view. Gritas, have you worked on a project, like a production project, where you were sending messages to Rabbit MQ bus directly from the front end? So we have to imagine that in a regular single page application setup, your front end is pure JavaScript. It's just pure Angular or React. Obviously, they also have server rendering techniques, right? Or technologies, but it's pure JavaScript. So I'm reluctant about this. So I think we should rely on HTTP or gRPC or GraphQL, but everything else or sending things to the message hub, that should be done only by the services, the service or the servers, let's say. Okay, cool. Let me do this right now, and I'm really sorry for that, but I need to take really a quick break. I promise you it will be just 5 minutes, and in 5 minutes I will be back again, and we will continue to implement, as I said, what we wanted to have in the web part. So an API client there and just a dummy component with a button in which we will wire up everything together and see that we can basically create new students from our web application, making call to the backend for frontend, and from the backend for frontend to our students' microservice. So please don't run anywhere. If you want, you can take this time to actually read an article from the Code Wrinkles website, https://codewrinkles.com, and I'll be back in 5 minutes. I promise this. So here we are back again. In the meantime, I also have upgraded my drink. I'm not sure I'm able to pronounce the... I'm not sure I'm allowed to pronounce the brand name, but yeah. I definitely felt the need of something else right now. Here for Taj or Tej Patel, I'm glad that you learned something new here. And if at least one person learns something new from my content, from my streams, from my videos, then I'm really happy with that. That's my goal, to really help people. And yeah, obviously during streams a lot of times there were also comments and pointing out things that even made me learn things, some new things. So that kind of like is a win-win situation, I would say. Cool. So have you checked the Code Wrinkles website? Maybe did you read something from it? How or what do you think about that? Okay, let's not lose momentum, and once again feel free to just use the chat. Don't be shy and write whenever you have a question or want to say something. Cool. So now let's move over. Once again, we have this where is our web project. Let's maybe make this smaller because we don't need this right now, because our web will just talk to the backend for front end. And here let me check again because I forgot a little bit. What do we have here? We have these features, and in services, what do we have in services? In services we have this outstate revalidation, which is for authentication, and that's okay. And then we have these cookie events, which was for the customizing the redirect login. But here I guess I will create a new subfolder and folder, and I will name this BFF API client. I know that this acronym for backend for frontend is maybe not the best one, but yeah. And here, why I want to create a folder here, because I think here, I said, I assume that this API client, because this web, it will only talk to the backend for frontend. It will not talk to any other services. So we'll just have one API client basically, and probably we'll end up having a lot of different models. And probably I would like to kind of like, I don't know, maybe move things into separate files. And the one thing that I want to create, I guess, would be a file that would create or that will have all the API models. So let's add here a new class, and let's call this API models. And this API models class, actually we don't really need a class here, because we'll just have a file that will have a bunch of different records. We'll mostly use records for that. Now, for creating a student, let's have here, for instance, a public record student create. And here in the student create, what we'll need to send. So here's basically the information that we will need to send to the backend for frontend. So if we go once again to this client, so we'll need to have this roll number, first name, last name, and a date time with the date of birth. Okay. Yeah, maybe just let's copy it over. I know it shouldn't be the case. Once again, right now it looks very similar because they are exactly the same properties, but I'm 100% sure in, I don't know, maybe a few weeks time, while we will still be building these projects, you will see that these different parts will start to evolve independently. So that's why I don't think it's a good idea to move all these records in just one other project and just reuse it, because it will break a lot of things. It kind of like it will make everything being really coupled to that specific project or definitions of these models. And then when we do a change at a certain point, even we might not realize that it will break something on another service that's using exactly the same model. So that's why I don't think it's okay to really move everything in just one other library. I just prefer to have them really independent. That ensures that our services are not that coupled and that we can evolve them separately. Okay. So is there any new comment? No, there isn't any new comments. Okay, cool. So we have this public record student.create, and yeah, that would be the student that we need to create. And then we will have this API client. And let me just create here class, but it would be an interface. For now, I will call this IBFF API client because it's the API client for the backend for frontend. Okay, and right now here we'll just need one method in this that will kind of like make a post request to the student.create. And I don't think I like what Copilot right now suggests to me. So what I will have here is a task of student, and but it's not student. Okay, because this will return something. So this will basically return. So we'll just need to also create another student that will also have the ID and that will also have the age property, because that's what our backend for frontend returns me. So let me go back to these API models, but I will also have here public record student basic info, because this will be only the basic information for the student. And the basic information right now will actually be what our backend for frontend returns, and it will be this one. So it will include the student ID from the student service or from the student microservice, but it will also include this calculated property of age. So let me just copy over. Let's move to the API models, because this is our record right now. Okay, so going back to our IBFF client, we'll have here a task of student basic info, because this is what this method will return. And then we'll need to name this. Now I remember that this all of these are asynchronous methods, so maybe it's okay to kind of like use this async suffix. I will not make this change right now everywhere. We'll do this at some other point. So we have a create a student. Now here in the create student, so here we'll use as a body. We need to install Refit also here to manage NuGet packages, because we haven't installed Refit here on this project. We just installed Refit on the other project. So Refit HTTP client factory, so that we can use Refit directly via the HTTP client factory. And to make sure that we have everything, let's just also add the regular Refit. So now we have these packages. Now we can just use Refit. So the body that I will need to provide to this client would be, how did we name it? API model, student create. Okay. And then we also need to define exactly where we want to post this. So we want to use here a post. Once again, this is from Refit, not from ASP.NET Core. And we want to kind of like send this to students. And this will be the student endpoint on the backend for frontend. And obviously we need to wire them up here in this one. So let me go to the project. So here we have these services, configure authentication, configure identity. These are extension methods that I have created, so to keep this kind of like clean. So what we'll do here is use builder.services.add refit client. What's the problem here? Using Refit. And I guess his configure client base address. Oh my god, this time GitHub Copilot was smart. Really, it kind of like understood that we want to have it here. But here we need to provide this this interface that we have created, and this is IBFF API client. So now we have wired everything up together, and based on the fact that our web project has a reference on the backend for frontend project, Aspire should wire everything up for us. Basically, it will use the correct URI for our backend for frontend. So at that URI, we will just append this student's endpoint and we'll make a post request and provide this as a body. So I guess this should wire everything up together. So let me just take a small break and check the comments, but I see there's no new comment here. Okay, so I guess you are all very attentive to what I was doing here. Okay, so I think now we have everything that we need for the backend. Now, the only thing that we just want to do here is to create on, let's have here features. That would be still on identity and access management, because here's these are the students from the perspective of managing their identities and their information. So I guess we will simply have them also here. So what I'll have here is a new folder, add new folder for this new students features, and another subfolder. Now in the students, right now I'm trying to kind of like understand a little bit how we'll proceed with the views that we have. So in the students, I guess we'll have kind of like here something like a homepage for the students. Once again, homepage for the students from the perspective of the administrator that administers the students, not from the perspective of the student itself when he or she logs in. That will be a whole other story. So I think what I'll want to have here is a Razor component, and I would kind of like, I don't know, maybe we'll have on this component students list. Yep. Now there are some things that I will need to do here. First of all, I would like here to specify a page, and the page will be slash students, or it would be slash identity and access management slash students. I guess that should be the correct page. We'll have to wire this up also in the nav menu and to make sure that it is the correct one, but for now it's okay. Now one thing that I know for sure is that we'll need to inject the BFF API client, and let's call this but maybe like this. So I want to inject this. Obviously here I guess we're missing a using. Why didn't it add it? Why don't you add the using? Come on. Okay, let's add this manually. Not for what the problem is. Now, smartschool.web. I guess it is services, then it is the BFF API client, and yeah, now it works. Cool. I'm really not sure why it didn't edit. I hate this, but yeah. Now, the only thing that I would still want to have here is I would like to have, and I think I will create this in a create student, and I will create another Razor component, and you'll see in a moment why. And I really think, I'm not sure really, it's still the beginning of this Blazor SSR, so I'm not sure about anything, but I still think right now my theory is that's the best way to do things is to kind of like make only very small components interactive and let everything else render on the server. So here I said we want to place a button, and when we click on this button, we kind of like will hardcode a new student and kind of like test all this creation of process. But that's why I don't want to add interactivity to the entire page. I just want to add interactivity to the button. Now, to add interactivity only to the button, I need to have that button as a component, because you can add interactivity only on the component level or on page level, but I don't want to add it on page level. I said my theory is, and it's not just for Blazor, it's just also for Next.js and for any really type of SSR framework, is you should try to keep the client interactivity only in very, very small bits and pieces of your application. So let's have here this create student button. Okay, now this create student button, I'm not sure, actually I guess we'll need to inject things here in this component and not. So basically, I guess, let's just copy everything and we'll just remove the paging. So here we don't need a page, but we need the API client, because here's where we will make the call. And here actually we will not use this API client at all. We will just use this one. And since I will want to have this server interactivity, not client interactivity, I really hate the idea of client interactivity, only for the fact that you kind of like to have it, you just need to add a whole new project basically to your setup that will kind of like be your WebAssembly host. And I feel this is a little bit cumbersome. So I am still a fan of this interactive server interactivity. So I will have on this component the render mode, it would be interactive server. Okay, what is the problem here? Identifier or explicit razor. Okay. Why does it have it like this? You know, I will do something else here even, because now I remember that there is kind of like a problem with this render mode interactive server, because by default it kind of like goes twice through all the lifecycle methods, one when it is pre-rendered and then one once kind of like when it's the interactive rendering, and we want to skip that. And to do this, what we can do here is just very simply say here new interactive server render mode, and here we can specify that I don't want to have a pre-render, so I can specify pre-render equals false, and this will add this render mode basically with everything that we have here. Cool. Now we just have here a button, and I think what we will do here is actually we'll have a little bit more than just a button. So first of all, yeah, we'll have a button. Okay. Oh yeah, GitHub Copilot already did some stuff for me, which is kind of like not bad. But what I would like to do, do I still have this option to wrap everything in a div? No, I don't find it. Once upon a time there was this option in Visual Studio to wrap everything in a div, but I see that right now I don't have it. Guys, are you still there? Because I see that there's really quietness here in the chat. So everybody's very, very quiet. Are you still there, or are you all sleeping already? Okay, so let's kind of like do this manually. So first I want to have this class row. We are using Bootstrap 5 basically. And here in this div, I would want to have a class all how much? Let's take half of it. Okay. Still here, Emmanuel. Thank you very much. Is anybody else still here? So let me just put this here. And you know what we'll do here is we'll have here another div, and that would be a different row. Class equals row. Here we'll have this div, and here class equals all that would be, that will take the entire viewport. Trent is already still here from Texas, thank you very much. Mohamed Ibrahim from Dallas, Texas. Okay, so now we have basically two people watching from the exact same state in the US. That's kind of like nice. Do you guys know each other? So are you kind of like friends, or it's just a coincidence that you are all or both here on the channel? Gregory Brewer just got here. Thank you very much. Welcome. I'm glad that you got here. So if you did get here, and sorry if hopefully I will not bore all the others, but as we have a new viewer here, it's time to make the announcement again. So if you missed it in the stream or on Twitter, I also posted it on Twitter during the stream. Starting today, the Code Wrinkles community also has a blog/website, and that's the blog or website. It's codewrinkles.com. Let me just paste it to you on the chat. Obviously right now I just have a few articles on that, on this blog. Kind of like I really stayed up last night a lot to kind of like set everything up here. But for those of you that kind of like prefer reading, you will also have this blog, and probably a lot of the videos that I make will also have a readable version here. But I will also post things here like news and other stuff that probably will not be part of videos. So make sure to kind of like go through it, see what we have there, and maybe bookmark your resource, and just be aware that we also have a blog right now. Okay, cool. So new announcement made. We'll rewatch the whole thing here in Michigan, US. Okay, Grand Brewer. Obviously, it will be available for rewatching later. And Trent, I don't think either. Okay, what? I don't believe we know each other. Ah, okay. So you guys that are both from Texas, you don't know each other. So I was just assuming that probably if both of you joined, that probably kind of like one told the other, hey, join this stream, or kind of like join this channel to watch it. But yeah, nice job on the blog. Thank you very much. I hope it will kind of like be successful in the long run. Obviously, I don't really have high expectations for the beginning, since it's a brand new blog, until it kind of like will get indexed, and I really try to focus to have proper SEO on the articles, but I really don't want to overdo it so that it's kind of like visible that I'm writing articles for key phrases or things like that. So I don't really have too high hopes on that. So my only hopes for the success of the blog is mostly relying on kind of like the Code Wrinkles subscribers and viewers like you, that will kind of like I don't know, maybe send it and share it, because otherwise probably it won't get that much traffic, at least for the next 6 months or so. Okay, so what I wanted to do here is I wanted to have here also a paragraph in which we will have this new student. Obviously we don't have the new student yet, so it just gives an error. But here's basically where we will render the response content string that we get from the backend for frontend. We will render it here to just make sure that that everything kind of like works. Now the only thing that we need to do here is the only thing that we need to do, I think, here is I want this to be an async method, obviously. So yeah, let's start to implement it. So first, no, I don't really need all the strings here. So I have here this private to just return a task. Right now I don't really care about, so I don't really need to return everything from here, because I will place the information in this new student that I will create as a property. So I guess that should be okay with that. And let's name this create student. As said, right now we don't need any incoming parameters, because we'll hard code everything here, like creating the new student. and all the stuff here. So private async task. Here in this on click, I think we can do something like this. Yep, and it, I guess it should work. But why is this button because we have here some, I guess now it should be okay. So the HTML was not right. Okay, so yeah, now we basically, when we click this button, we just let's have here access. I like the green one more. Cool. And let's just have here this private string new student, but I will set this to string.empty. So it basically will not show anything there. So now what we need to do is we need to use this API client that we, but why is it not unclosed tag? Why is it okay? Yep. So now everything should be okay. Now we bind the student and put it in the paragraph. So now let's say that what we have here. So let's say var result equals await. But it's not create student async. Yep. And we need a new instance of this student create. So we'll create this var new student equals new student create. So here we'll need to provide a lot of different properties. So let me check here. Roll number, first name, last name, and date of birth. Roll number equals, this should be a GUID actually. So let's have this GUID.new GUID. And this doesn't call them to string automatically, or this is a method also. Sorry for that. Okay, so we have the roll number, first name. Let's just use John. Last name. Let's just use Doe. Though the indentation is not okay. And then no, I don't have an email. I have date of birth equals date time now 8 years minus 20. I guess that would do it. That would do it. Okay. And then I guess what's the problem here? There is no argument given that corresponds to the required parameters roll number. How is this the case? Because this is a record and I have to specify this not in the object initializer, but I have to specify this in the constructor. Cool. Okay, so to keep the constructor as short as possible, let me var roll number. Let's move this there, and var date of birth. Okay, then I guess we'll have everything that we need. These are the only more complex things that we needed. So we'll just provide the roll number. We'll just provide, no, not new student, but we'll provide John for the first name. But what happens here with these roll cards? Doe as the last name. And last but not least, we'll provide the date of birth. Now we should have a new student. And then we can simply say await, and we'll just provide a new student. Cool. So now we have everything back, and this will return me the basic info. So Refit will also kind of like serialize or deserialize basically the response that it gets to my C# object. So I don't really need to do anything like on the result, read a string async and so on and so forth. Now the only thing is that we have this student basic info. Now this student basic info, I want to render it here in this new student. So right now, if I just have the object, if I just call to string, it will just simply, well, give me the full object name basically. So I don't want to have this. So what I will do in this case is, actually let's keep it simple for now, because that's kind of like just for testing everything out. So things will be done a little bit differently when we create all the UI around that. So I will have here this new student, and that would be something like this. I will still use string interpolation, but then I will have roll number. Then the roll number would be kind of like the result roll number. Then what I will do, I will just have here a \n for a new line. Why if I go here on a new line? Because earlier, basically, I can remember that when we had this new line, it automatically basically created a new string. So yeah, I will kind of like right now do this operation that's obviously from a memory perspective very bad. But as I said, I would want to have things. So student ID, that would be equal to result dot ID. Okay, so it's this one. But just maybe remove this comma. Let's just have a new line here. So \n. And then I will have here plus. Once again, use what's the next? First name. First name plus. Let's maybe move up again. Here, once again, I want to have an interpolated string, last name. It would be the result of last name. And let's add the new line. Also add the new line here. I forgot it. We have the first name, last name. What other properties do we have? I guess let's just use the age and that would be it. Because since that is a calculated property, I want to make sure that it works and that's nicely propagated throughout the entire system. So it would be age, so we will not display the entire result of age, and let's also add a \n here. Cool. So now the new student basically should have a new value, and that should kind of like update the UI. So this is our component, that is this create student button. So what we'll do here is we'll just have here this create student button. But I don't want to have all this stuff here. Create student button, and I also, the razor components can kind of like be closed on themselves. Using smart school, okay, but I don't want to add this as a using, or maybe let's just take it from here. And now where do we have these features? Identity and access management, imports, and yeah, let's place it in the imports. And theoretically right now, as it is in the imports, it should be this here. Yep. Cool. So now basically we have the create student button. Now the only thing that we still need to check is if everything is wired up correctly on our navigation menu. So to do this, Where do we have this type of stuff? I guess it's in component, layout, to the term. I think it's nav menu. Authorized role, IAM nav link. Okay, this contains here IAM students. Yeah, it does. So it's already there. So let me just check is IAM students, and let's go back to my student page. IAM students. Here we need to also provide this this forward slash. Cool. So now I think we should be good to go and give it the first try, and obviously see where everything will fail, because it can't really work from the first try. So that wouldn't be possible when you do a live stream or a demo or something like this. Cool. So yeah, that's our Aspire dashboard. Let's go here to our web application, and let's go here. We have this student, and right now we have this create student button. Okay, so let's click create. Yeah, I said it. It's not possible to have it without any errors. So what exactly happened here? Where do we have an error here? To the term call stack. Exceptions. Output. Okay, what was the error? Let me just take a look here. Okay, response status code does not indicate success, not found. So red fit request builder implementation. Basically, some HTTP request was actually not going through. I assume this is response status code does not indicate success. Let's make this bigger. So where was the problem here? Create student button, create student. Okay. So it was here basically on line 26. And then here, I guess, oh, it's kind of like the same thing. Cool. Okay, so you know what? We have Aspire. So where we can kind of like traces. Okay, and let's, how can I view this one? So this is web, and this kind of like wanted to make a request here. So but here actually I see the endpoint, the client server post HTTP 404 not found. HTTP target. So it was for HTTP localhost 51302. Okay. Localhost 51302. Okay, let me go to this projects. Not here. Projects here. And the backend for front end is running. It's 5033. So obviously it was not working. That's bad. That's a problem with Aspire. So basically Aspire, no operations. Oh my god, guys, no, I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid. Let's close everything. Because you know what the problem is? The problem is in our backend for front end. In our backend for front end, we did create the endpoints, but we didn't register them with the application. So to the term, it should be kind of like here. We need to add the using. So we kind of like didn't add these endpoints. So we created them, but we didn't bring them to the application. And since we are here, let me just go back here to the student endpoints. And here we have this map post, but there are a few other things that I want to have here. With name, and here I will have this create student produces. Here I think it would be 200 and type of. So what does it produce? The result is student basic info, student base info. And this kind of like should give more information to the Swagger UI. Not sure if we need to add everything or anything here. Cool. Let's run the application now again. And before we kind of like make the call, we'll just check if the Swagger UI of the student service is updated because of the backend for frontend is updated. So let's go here at the backend for frontend. And yeah, now it is updated. So obviously there was a problem with the port, like when they were making the request. I'm not sure if that is solved, but surely that was another issue right now with what we have here, because we didn't really have anything wired up. So let me go back to students and let's, no, we still have an error. So we are still back at square one. So don't tell me that Aspire kind of like it's still not found. Let's go to the Aspire dashboard, check it once again. So let's go on traces. We have this trace here and the web that was making a call here. So the endpoint was a students post HTTP on students and localhost 51511. Okay, but why is it like this? Because I assume it's not the same that we have here, or it's not the same on which the application is running. So 51511 projects backend for frontend. No, because this is 5033. So I'm really not sure exactly what happens here, but kind of like Aspire doesn't do the configuration correctly. And this should be out of the box. Why don't we use the type result of T so that we do not have to change the produce? I guess we use the type results, but when I tested with this, I think it kind of like didn't really render it correctly, but we are using the type results. So that's what we created. So now we have a problem here because we have this error. Unhandled exception on circuit. Okay, I was not able to do this. Unhandled exception, API exception, restore status doesn't indicate success, 404 not found. So definitely I got a 404 not found. Cool. Let me, I don't know, check once again the entire configuration that we have here in Aspire. So first of all, we have this student and we add this, it has a name smart school and .student and then BFF. You know what, I'm not sure exactly, but maybe the fact that we're using a dot here, I don't know, it might affect how things go. So let's have here students, let's have here just BFF, and let's have here just web. I'm not sure if this is a problem, to be honest, but I kind of like had a very similar project with .NET Aspire and I don't recall having this problem at all. So now we need to do the changes here in the program.cs in this one. It will not be Smart School BFF, but it will be simply BFF. And then we need to kind of like also make this in the backend for frontend. So it will not be smartcool.student, but it will just be students instead. Even though is the name the same as we have here. Students, yes, it should be the same. So right now we have everything wired up. Let's try again. Okay. So this API is okay. It's always on this port 5033, it seems. But I'm not sure exactly why. Kind of like doesn't okay, not roles. It's not what I wanted. Student. So I still get the same error here. So we still get exactly the same error here. Still not found. But, let me go to the traces again. Let me view this one. And the call to the backend for front end, post HTTP, student, local host. So it's kind of like doesn't map the port correctly. So that seems to be the problem. It doesn't map the port correctly. And this should be handled by Aspire, basically. So there's not really a lot I can do about it, I guess. To be honest, well, since Aspire is a new technology, and as said, I had a very, very similar project already running, and I didn't have this problem, so I really don't know where to start with this. So if you have any idea, just please let me know. If you have any idea or why, because the port is not mapped correctly. This is not the port on which actually the application runs. So this application runs on a totally different port. So kind of like Aspire takes the wrong configuration. It really does the wrong configuration. Not sure exactly. Let me just close everything right now. Let me go a little bit through the launch settings.json. So I want to have this, I don't know what we have here. So profile HTTP, project.net message, okay, local host, application URI, environment variables, is development.net dashboard, local host. Okay, so that's basically for the Aspire host. Let me go for this web. Here we have three different schemas, but kind of like we work on three different profiles. So we have this HTTP, HTTPS. I'm not sure exactly, but HTTPS is not working for me. So I have installed the certificate, the Visual Studio certificate on this computer. I have trusted it. I have done everything, but it's still not working. So I'm really not sure exactly why. So this runs on this one. And let's check in the backend for front end, launch settings.json. So we have here this HTTP profile, and this runs on. So this is actually the one that's correct. So it does it correct. Then we have this HTTPS, and it's those endpoints. And then we have this IS Express, in which we actually don't have any launch URL presented. So I wonder how kind of like does Aspire do this configuration wrong? Could be something with Refit and the Aspire service locator. Yeah, it most probably is something with Refit, but I don't think it's the Refit itself, because the Refit, it just takes here a base address. So basically it's kind of like here the part that basically Aspire should basically replace this BFF with the local host and then the corresponding correct port. And Aspire is aware of the correct port, because when we see the service basically in that dashboard, we see the correct port for it. But somehow it doesn't really get mapped correctly here on the other side. So that's That's a little bit unfortunate, I would say. Because that's how we need to configure it. Now, to solve this problem, and to make sure that at least it works, and I'll look on the Aspire stuff probably later. But what we can do, maybe you are being redirected to HTTPS port. No, that's why I checked the launch settings.json. So I was not redirected to the HTTPS port. I was redirected to a port that was not even specified in the launch settings.json. That's why I checked that. So I was not redirected to the HTTPS. And so yeah, but yeah, that's the main reason I checked it. So it was localhost, and since we already had this launch settings.json on the backend for front end, let me check again. So you see that the HTTPS was, for HTTPS it would kind of like be this, but it redirected me to a high port, so it was 50,000 and something, and I'm not sure exactly where did it take that port from, because it was not this port, which is an SSL for IIS. It was even not this port. It was not 59912. It was something with 3 and something like that. So it was not even this port. So I'm really not sure exactly where it did take this from. So it's 5033. So if we go back to our program.cs, it would be 5. Okay. And now I would expect this to work, but I'm curious if it will break on the student part. So I'm just curious if this problem is only between the link of the web application with the backend for frontend, or it's kind of like a general for the entire solution. So let me just run it again. Okay, so we are here on the web. Let's go to students and let's click create, and we still have the error. Let's go to the dashboard and see if we have the exact same error here, even though we should go on the traces. And it seems we have the error exactly on the, so we have the web that makes a request to that backend for frontend, so API students. So it was HTTP localhost 5033 student. Okay, but why? What was the error this time? 404. Okay, how was it 404? Because if we go to this backend for frontend, it's 5033. So if we would like to try this out, obviously we'd need to kind of like specify all this this stuff here, and that's not something that I would like to do here right now. But it's okay. No, something went totally wrong here, because this endpoint, I don't know, maybe some Copilot stuff. But still the port was not correct. So let's go to the backend for frontend. Or no, no, that was actually, no, I was looking at the wrong place. I was looking at the wrong place. I think I need to change the port. Because the backend for frontend, no, it's the correct one. It's this one, 5033. And post is student.create, but I obviously don't make a call to student.create. But why is it student.create? Let me go to the endpoint definition. Okay, sorry, because my endpoint is defined like this. I guess I just had this from Copilot and I didn't delete it. So yeah, I kind of like, I want this map post to be basically on the home of the students, basically on this group, so on /students. Okay, so let's try again. The port was right now. Okay. Yeah. So let's try it again with the web application. Students. Create student. Okay. So now we're rolling. Now we roll. student is 0, first name John, last name Doe, age 20. But why was the ID 0? That's not okay. It means that this student was not created in the database. So it means that the student was not created in a database, but at least we got the result. Now we know that it kind of like also worked the response, so or the call to the, let's go here on traces, and you see that it actually, so we made a request to the backend for frontend, and the backend for frontend made a request to students, and this request to students actually worked correctly. Okay, cool. So we see that that's kind of like the nice thing about Aspire, how you can basically see for each action that you do in the UI, you can see basically everything that happens and all the different services that are called or components that are part of doing something for creating this one. So this one was HTTP post and the HTTP status code was 200, so it was created okay. Okay, let me just close everything right now once again. What I would like to check is if we have this student in the database. View, I have already the Solution Explorer there. So where is SQL Server Object Explorer? It should be in Smart School Students. And on View Data. Actually, I have it. So the student was created in the database. I think I missed the email property. No, these properties are we can add it afterwards. So basically what we have here is that it was added to the database, but why was the ID 0? Let's take a look there. Let me just close this. So you know what I want to test afterwards is, let's revert this one to the BFF. Now you see that in the backend for frontend, I just used this student's name, so the name that I use in Aspire, and it worked. So the call from the backend for frontend, you need to also define port. Theoretically, you wouldn't. And this is an example that you don't, because the call from the backend for frontend to the student's microservice worked correctly. And we didn't provide the port there. So that's why I just wanted to revert back here. So it would just BFF, which should be the name that we have in Aspire, which is this one. So and we have a reference in the web project, a reference to this one. So so it's okay. Good, but let me go to the student service and try to understand what did I do wrong here. Create student controller. So we have here a command and create student, and this command, let's go to the handler. Because the problem is probably here. So we have student, we create a student with the roll number, the first name, the last name, and the date of birth. We add the student, and then we kind of like save it in the database. We await it, and everything's okay. But then we have this student basic info from student and student. Now this student also has an ID that has a default value 0. Okay. But by the time we do this mapping, this should already be saved in a database, and then this student should have the updated ID. So from student info, okay, so basically here we created a manual mapping. So we get the student ID, roll number, first name, last name, date of birth, and age. So why is this ID not? Now I will place a breakpoint here. And we are in debug. So let's run the application and let's try to do it again. I mean, we can reuse the same method because kind of like, yeah, we will have students with the same roll number and stuff, but I will delete them afterwards, so no problem, and the identifier will be still different. Now, I'm curious if the call from the web to the backend for frontend will work, And then I'm also curious to hit this breakpoint and to see and to check exactly why the student ID is not the number that it gets basically when it gets saved. Okay, so now it worked. So I guess it was due to the problem that I had the wrong endpoint. So if I take a look in the student right now, ID is 2. Okay. But let me go to this create student controller and let me just also place a result there. So the ID is okay here in the student. And then why is this mapping not going okay? Result. This ID is okay. So I guess maybe we have some, I guess I know why. So on this one, this result is called student ID. But on the backend for frontend, I think we used a different name. Okay, now we had an exception. Why did we have an exception? Oh, that's strange. I wouldn't expected this exception. So what was the unhandled exception occurred while executing the request? A resilience event on timeout. Ah, okay, so we had the breakpoint and it kind of like timed out. Okay, cool. So let's kind of like troubleshoot this a little bit. So I think that the problem here is that here in our result, what we return is student basic info. So we have this student.id. So here we name this student ID. So this is what we return from the students API. Now let's go to the backend for frontend. So I think the problem is actually here, because this result will be a student basic info. And see here, the problem is that this ID, it doesn't really have the same name. So it needs to be student ID. Okay. So now we are okay with this. But then it means that we have to also make down the line this change here in our API models, because this will also be student ID. And this in turn will break something on my create student, because I don't have this one. I have only this one. You typed wrong student ID. Okay. Where did I do this? Where did I type it wrongly? Let me check again. Let me check again. So student ID. Okay. Student. Okay, here it is. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you a lot. Cool. So now, once again, I think we can make this work. So let's run it again. I don't recall if I removed all the breakpoints, but we'll check this, or we'll check that. So we are interested only in the web. Students, create student. Yep. Let's just click on continue. Let's just also click on continue. So roll number is this, student ID 3, first name, last name, John, and everything works fine. So yeah, we have everything wired up together. And now also Aspire was working correctly. So it seems that if the endpoint is wrong, somehow the ports got mapped strangely. I don't know, because I made a, I changed it back to how it was before it was working. So, so you see here, we have this post request and you see all the hops that kind of like needed to travel to get all the data. So from our web to the backend for frontend, then to the students ID, then to the students, and then to this web API. So if we take a look into the view, we can see here even a timeline on how long it did take. And we can then take a look into each of these traces separately. And all this type of stuff we get from .NET Aspire basically out of the box. You see also the configuration, it turns out to work correctly right now. So we are good to go. Okay, so I think we have achieved a lot of nice things today. And I think this is where we call it a day, but not before. Once again, let's spend just a few minutes. If you have any questions or just want to get a discussion going, jump in the chat, don't be shy, and get in touch with me. Talk to me, and I obviously will talk to you. But it would be important to understand if there are any outlying questions or topics that you think you might want to discuss regarding on what we have done so far in this live stream. By the way, can you let me know if you can view the stream correctly, if everything's okay with the stream? Can you please just let me know if everything's okay, because I get some error from YouTube that is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. As such, viewers will experience, I don't know, something. You know, I think maybe the next time I will just stream directly only to YouTube and not use anything other than that. But yeah, we'll see that. We'll see about that. So I see there are some questions that start to come here. I would like to know what level of developers are watching this stream. Actually, that's a very good thing. Thank you very much, Trent, for kind of like saying this. So if you're watching this, please let us know if you are, I don't know, how many years of experience do you have with .NET development? That would be great. That would also help me understand kind of like to better tailor my video content basically for this. So that would be important. What are your thoughts about strongly typed IDs? That's kind of like a very, very nice thing to ask. I'm not sure if you kind of like already heard me about this. So I will say only this. Initially, when I first, I don't know, some years back, when I first saw or heard or watched this idea of strongly typed IDs, I was thinking, oh my god, this is great. This is so great. This is so cool. So I was really all into strongly typed IDs. Now, eventually, when I also started to kind of like go deeper into domain-driven design and reading Eric Evans' book and Von Vernon's book, I kind of like found out that this idea of, well, strongly typed IDs has also some very, very deep roots in these DDD books. Even though I don't recall if they are explicitly mentioned, but the idea of creating this strongly typed identifier is something very good. However, when I started to work with this in practice, it really adds more complexity and headaches than problems that it solves. Because you will see that you will find it harder to create relationships, especially if you're using Entity Framework Core. And I know when we design your model, and so you shouldn't kind of like take into consideration other concerns, but that's the theory from my point of view. The practice in most of the applications, like small and mid-sized applications, well, you kind of like need to do this. You kind of like, you can't really build a full-blown DDD engine around a small application. It doesn't really make sense. You just invest a lot of time, which ultimately translates into a lot of money that somebody would have to pay for, to just kind of like create a whole thing around a very small application that doesn't really need it. Now, the problem with the strongly typed identifier is that you will have a lot of headaches when you try to create relationships using strongly typed identifiers. So you will start needing to have to tweak around with configurations and manually creating that relationships, and those relationships will still not work. However, so really there is a lot of headache. And as long as you have an application that's a little bit bigger than what we have right now, so a very small, basically demo application, strongly typed IDs kind of like add a lot of complexity, a lot of time spent on debugging, on kind of like setting things up or finding why certain things don't work as they expect to work. So I started to kind of like move away from strongly typed IDs, and I really prefer right now to use with the regular identifiers that we mostly use, like integers or GUIDs. So that's my history with these strongly typed IDs, I would say. Cool. Please let me know if this kind of like answers your question, and maybe just let me know what you think about that, about the use of strongly typed IDs. Okay, so we see here the stream is fine, so YouTube was then just kind of like giving some false information. The stream looks and sounds great to me, no problem from my end. And okay, Sinan said that you are a developer since 2003. Oh my god. Oh my god. So you are way more experienced than I am. Way more. So in 2003 is when I started to study philosophy, not computer science. So I got into computer science a lot later. So you definitely have kind of like 20 years of experience, 21. That's huge. 7 years. That's also huge. And then Sudi David, to determine the number of years you could conduct a poll. Yes, I could do this, and I will probably do this, but since this question came up in the chat, I think it kind of like was also a great opportunity to kind of like get in touch also with each other and be reactive and be responsive. So my dream is that we start to behave like a real community where everybody communicates with everybody in the chat. So when you write something in the chat, then any other person can answer. So I just want to be a real community here. Okay, then Gregory, thank you. That aligns a lot with my current thoughts are to only use strongly typed IDs at the integration event level and not at the domain level. Yeah, that might be a good approach. And then Gregory, I have been working with .NET since 2002. Oh my god! So I guess .NET just came out in 2002 or 2001 or something like this. So basically you are from the first ever .NET version here. So Sinan, did you study philosophy? I am also philosophy graduate. Yes, I did study philosophy. I have a major in philosophy, and I also have a major in theology. And then I got into IT. So, but that's a whole other story. Maybe we'll think about this or well, talk about this in another stream. But I don't think it. I really didn't think that this would be so exciting to make a discussion point out of it. Do you have some personal mentoring? That's actually a great question, and I will tell you that I have not yet. However, I have already discussed this, and I will start do some personal mentoring. So I'm in the setting up phase. So right now, basically this weekend, I have set up the Code Wrinkles blog and website. Most probably next weekend, I will set up some mentoring and the platform for calendars where I share my calendar and where you can just directly submit basically and create basically an event in my calendar for some mentoring. So I will definitely do that. And so stay tuned, because probably next week around the same time, so on Sunday, you might hear some announcement about that. I was working with the betas. Oh my god, so you are really from the beginning of .NET. That's, I don't know. I think I know only one person that was there from the beginning of .NET, which is Dino Esposito, that I also know personally. And probably Scott Hanselman, but Scott I don't know personally, so yeah. That's another thing, but wow, it's really wow. So you basically witnessed the entire evolution of .NET so far. I guess it would be nice if you can, I don't know, maybe bring your thoughts about how .NET evolved and how it was back then, how it is right now, and what you think about that. Maybe just get in touch with me via my email address. You can find it on the Code Wrinkles YouTube channel. And maybe if you want to kind of like have a guest post on the Code Wrinkles site or blog about your thoughts about how .NET evolved, that would be kind of like very interesting. Wow, theology, that is interesting. So are you a preacher? No, I'm not. I kind of like never did that professionally. So initially when I started, kind of like that was my idea. And to be honest, I don't regret of studying it, because you have to kind of like understand. So I've studied theology basically in Rome, in a university that's in the theological space. It's like the Harvard. So it's kind of like the highest you can get. And in that university, when you study theology, you actually study a lot of stuff that is not theology related. So I have to study, for instance, besides like languages like Latin or ancient Greek or Hebrew, I had to study, for instance, Roman law, like pure Roman law with teachers from the regular state university. So nothing to do with theology. We needed to have 4 semesters of psychology, like pure psychology, scientific. Everything was scientific. So I really don't regret it. Obviously, we had a lot of history, so really a lot of history there. So I really don't regret it. I really enjoyed it very much. But I kind of like during my studies found out that I never would be able to see myself as a preacher. So that's when I said, okay. When I finished the studies, I said, yeah, I kind of like need to do something else. And I was always passionate about computers and installing Windows and tweaking around and things like that. So I said, okay, I should get into IT. And obviously getting into IT, first I was kind of like my first job in IT was being basically a service desk call agent. And that's how I started with IT. And then there, obviously, I learned a lot, even if it was just a regular service desk. And that allowed me to then basically get a job at Microsoft in their consultancy business, more or less, for partners. But there is basically where I have started to kind of like learn a lot more, also IT related. And there I started to also learn programming on myself. So here, Trent, I learned BASIC in 1980, studied Pascal in college. I had some Pascal lessons in high school. I guess we had informatics labs, but they were kind of like very, very, very basic stuff. Getting paid to code around 1998. So, oh my God. So you're also from the beginning of C# here, Trent. That's really amazing. A lot of people that have way more experience than I have. Okay, yes, I will definitely kick off the mentoring, so you will have to just stay tuned one more weekend and it will be there. I remember updating my first project from 1.0 to 1.1. That was painful. I assume it's not the .NET Core versions 1.0 and 1.1, but the very first .NET versions, I guess. And then obviously people that are so experienced, they obviously witness the same problems. So I remember migrating from 16-bit C++ to 32 bits, and then from 32 bits to 64. So then from 32 to 64. So that's a change that I witnessed also myself, basically. Cool. Yeah. So we did manage to also talk a little bit about my history. I'm not sure if this was interesting for you, but since the question came up, I was thinking, okay, hey, why not? We should definitely discuss about that. Cool. Okay, guys, if you're not subscribed to this channel, make sure to subscribe, obviously. And also, if you think that you have friends or people that might find this channel interesting, feel free to share it with them. Also, videos from this channel, also the Code Wrinkles blog, the new blog that we have. Make sure that people know about it, because it will for sure not get traction via search engines, at least for the first few months. So you are my only hope to get some traction on this specific blog. And stay tuned for the announcement that will come next week regarding mentoring. And I guess we can call it a day for today. Thank you very, very much for joining and tuning into this live stream. I also thank you very much for being very active in the chat. I really did enjoy this stream a lot because you were very active. There were a lot of questions and discussion points, and I really enjoyed it. So that's my dream, is that these live streams and the people that will be here will start being more and more a community, and it will discuss more and more between themselves and with me. So that's what I hope the most for this live stream, and definitely we will go on with it. It will always be probably Sundays or Mondays. I will announce it in advance, but for sure it will be Sundays or Mondays, at least until the vacation that I will have in February. And afterwards we'll see if the days changes, but the live stream will always be Monday or Sunday. So also stay tuned for the announcement where the next live stream will be. Cool. Once again, really thank you very much for joining, and I really wish you a great day for those of you who are in the US. Good night for those of you who are watching on European time zones, or maybe Australia or Asia or other similar time zones. I really appreciate you staying up so late. And yeah, we'll catch them up in a week or so on the next episode in this live stream. Until then, take care of yourselves and keep coding, and yeah, have a great one.